Afternoon. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, and welcome to km4dev Knowledge Cafe. Today we have an opportunity to learn from our expertise in the area of KM and AI. Feel free to share with us where you're joining from. And today I am here with my colleagues, Rosho and Chatboom, and the three of us will be facilitating this Knowledge Cafe. This comes after the success of the last Knowledge Cafe, which we were focusing on the useful applications of ChatGPT in the knowledge work, which was led by the Johannes. And for those who did not participate and wish to watch the recording, we are having the link in the chat. Remember, it's not just about ChatGPT, but also a number of articles that has been shared through the LinkedIn km4dev and also other sources. So today we are happy to look at how AI and ML is affecting the work of knowledge management and how the nature of AI is changing and how this is affecting the practitioners and organizations. We have a busy agenda, and also don't forget that we have incredible knowledge, expertise, and participants who are looking forward to expected to learn more from us. And then how is the session going to be? In this session, we will have among us Bernardo, Mariano, who is the Assistant General, who is the Assistant Secretary General, Chief Information Technology Officer at United Nations. He will be doing the opening remarks of the session, and thereafter we will have a Q&A. The second part of the session, we will have a Fishbowl, which we have Johannes, who is a knowledge management advisor and also the Integral Business Coach and AI advocate and the CEO of Integral Knowledge Management. In addition to that, we have Ian, who is the Chief Organizational Learning and Knowledge Management at UNICEF. And finally, we have Sarah Wakuti, who is the Information and Knowledge Management Specialist at Kenya Railways. And the third section, we have a reflection, which will open to the plenary, joining the Fishbowl. We are lucky to have our expertise, which includes Chris, who is the Vice President of the World Association of Medical Editors, that's WAME. And also he has done great work in terms of recommendation on chatbots and also generative AI in relation to scholarly publications. In addition, we have Malika, who is from the UNICEF, and we have Alice Varela, who is the global and knowledge management visionary and also strategist. He has wrote quite articles on different articles on human to human, and also as an expert in the area of knowledge management and AI. And finally, we have Professor Tom Senachi, who is a lecturer and also a knowledge manager in information technology from various universities in Kenya. So finally, thereafter, we have a chat room, which will serve in sharing various questions, and then also this will guide us in continuing for future sessions. So let's start the session with opening the floor to Bernardo, who will be reflecting on how AI and ML will affect or is already affecting our work. And thank you so much for joining us today in this session. A number of participants present here will reflect on the interest of this topic. Feel free to write your questions and also comments on the chat. Over to you, Bernardo.
Thank you, Gladys. Ladies and gentlemen, colleagues, buenos dias, bon dia, bonjour, good morning, or good evening, afternoon, depending on where you are. It is a great pleasure for me to be here with you today and to discuss this topic, which has quite a significance in our very rapidly evolving digital age. The realm of knowledge management is undergoing a profound transformation as we witness this advance of machine learning, artificial intelligence, large language models. All these new frontier technologies, some of them started long ago, but are evolving rapidly now, have a potential to revolutionize how we gather, organize, leverage knowledge within our organization. One technology in particular that is really disrupting all industries and promise to change our lives is generative artificial intelligence, which I'll be referring to generative AI, which is a form of artificial intelligence that can create text, image, sound, videos, which strongly resembles human creation. So new tools are emerging at a very rapid speed using generative AI, and they have the potential to overtake some of the traditional roles held by humans. And this is unfolding as we know. Right now, some are comparing this revolution with the moments that transformed our civilization, such as discovery of fire, electricity, and others that really significantly changed the ecosystem. In this case, it changed the physical ecosystem. Now here we are talking about changing in this digital ecosystem. For knowledge creators, curators, keepers, these advances raise legitimate questions. Some, I would even say, perhaps some fear. Will the work of the knowledge creators, curators, keepers be relevant? Will it exist in the future? One thing for sure, it will be transformed. Those roles with the advances on generative AI will not be the same. So while it's very easy to assume that the AI will perhaps threaten some of the jobs or create new ones, it is also important to consider a third possibility: how AI will be a catalyst for job evolution. So if I look from this paradigm, AI will certainly transform existing jobs rather than eliminate them, will require professionals to develop a new skill and adapt to a changing landscape, same way we adapted when the fire was when we discovered the fire, when we had all those major shifts in our discovery process as human beings. So by leveraging these AI technologies such as the large language models and machine learning, deep learning, knowledge management professionals can help organizations to improve decision-making, to make sure that productivity is increased, cost is reduced. So therefore, it's fundamental that the knowledge management professionals play a key role to recognize the potential of this technology to really address and transform and evolve the role of these professionals. Let me share with you a use case in the Secretariat, in UN Secretariat. We do have a number of container of public available data as well as private available data. I'll talk about two containers. We have the General Assembly resolution, so all member states during the 77 years of the United Nations, 78 actually just turned, and there's a lot of content that we have in those resolutions. And we have, of course, the many Secretary Generals, including Secretary General Antonio Guterres, that issue a lot of reports and press releases. So we use Azure AI to prototype, to tap into these containers and generate some insight and knowledge. And it was very powerful. For instance, AI could tell me what did, for instance, Switzerland say in a specific resolution that took place 15 years ago, and then create a reference and the AI would show the reference. So this is an example where you can actually take that the algorithm and tap into a data container that is trusted, is accurate. It's a reflection of an accurate life events in the life of the United Nations to actually generate insights. and then ask the AI to summarize, to actually recreate the position paper based on what was there. So the results were amazing. Well, cost was amazing too, because all that is not for free, is not cheap. So over the past 2 decades, a number of tools have been developed to simply capture this knowledge sharing and to actually address the issue of ever expanding volume of data, to address the task of uncovering valuable knowledge from these large data sources. So artificial intelligence and generative AI will make that problem easier by simplifying that knowledge discovery. Like the example I mentioned to you is exactly that, is a knowledge discovery from a data set. So we are moving into a new phase of search capability insights, because generative AI will be making it easier for people to find the knowledge where they're looking for. I would say the most effective role of artificial intelligence and machine learning in knowledge management practice will be to assist humans, not to replace them, to assist them in achieving collaborative intelligence in which AI and humans can enhance each other's complementary strength. AI will excel in data process and pattern recognition, while human brings that creativity, empathy, contextual understanding to the table. So therefore, knowledge management practitioners are essential in this area. And there's, of course, the recognized evolution. All that is the great side of it, of generative AI. But there's nothing that is great that comes without risks. There are large, very significant risks. The example I gave you of General Assembly resolutions, or the report of Secretary General for the AI to generate responses based on this content. Somebody can turn this all around, can take very curated content in a very protected system where people subscribe, and then generate a response to a reality that is fake. So the risks on governance and ethics are very significant. And some of them are already documented, let alone the bias, discriminations, and privacy issues, as well as quality of data, where all the incorrect input, which I just mentioned as an example, that can be certainly be used. And I'm sure some players will use that for their own gains, to make sure that they change the minds of people in such a certain direction based on their own agenda. So generative AI has those challenges, and from the United Nations Secretariat, we look, about the whole United Nations system, we are certainly working on this. To see if we can have some sort of a governance framework for AI, to where there are several efforts right now. The European Union, and who's working on the AI Act, to Boston, that issued this responsible experimentation approach, and as well as the United Nations upcoming Summit of the Futures, and the work that the Secretary General Tech Envoy is working on, the Global Digital Compact. All to say that the need to have these guardrails to protect us against the risks of AI is a collaborative effort that will require all of us to make sure that we all put our brains and influence together to make sure that, be it at national level or at the international level, those guardrails are there to really make a better use of generative AI. My office is issuing for a guidance, because actually we are running behind from the policy perspective. We are all behind the practice, because the AI is advancing quite rapidly, and we don't have organizational policies So we're just issuing a practical guidance on generative AI in a number of agencies. I know UNICEF issued, World Bank issued. I chair all the CIOs of the UN system, and we just the next week we are finalizing a UN-wide guidance on generative AI, trying to catch up. So we also adopted together with UNESCO the principles and for ethical AI. So this is something that is being used. And as I said before, there's the Conference of the Futures, Summit of the Futures, and the Global Digital Compact ongoing as ways to have these multilateral international practices, norms, policies that will help to establish some sort of a governance on AI. So your role as expert, as you advise different entities, it's important in this area to make sure that that angle is looked into, in addition to, of course, the potential that the generative AI brings. So knowledge management professionals, your role is evolving. It will evolve. I see you as orchestrators of intelligent systems, guiding their development to ensure that we have an ethical use of this new transforming technology. You will harness the power of AI to extract meaningful insights from this vast amount of data and leverage knowledge to drive decision-making. Imagine a world where information is effortlessly organized and accessible, where expertise is readily identified and connected, where knowledge flows seamlessly across boundaries. This is the future of AI. That is the future that AI can bring if we use it for good. So let's embrace this exciting future with open arms, while remaining vigilant to prevent it from being misused. So let's all embrace this concept of artificial intelligence for good. Therefore, today, let's explore the future of knowledge management in this era of machine learning and artificial intelligence. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Wondering if there is any question. You can raise your hands if you have any question, any specific question to Bernardo. No question? Okay. Sophie, do you want to jump in?
I don't know if it's going to work because I'm traveling and I'm not sure the connection is fantastic. So I'll try. I think that many organizations are now working on guidelines on AI, but I have the impression that everybody is doing things alone instead of having coordination. So for me, what is important is that it's good to hear who has been thinking about it, and now maybe we should try to actually put everything together so that we have a more uniform and also a common way of approaching AI. Thank you.
If I may comment on that, there are two, there's a number of, I would say, congregations of entities, right? As my role as Chief Information Technology Officer, I chair this network of, we call Digital Technology Network, that brings all the Chief Information Officers of all the UN agencies together. So on next month, early next month, we are issuing a guidance that is for the UN system wide. So that's one coordinated approach. Of course, agencies have issued, some of them are advanced, issued early already. Some others are behind. So that's a normal maturity of any technology. We have some early adopters and late comers. But we are going to issue early next month, which is next week. We will issue generative AI guidance for the UN system. So that's one, I would say, congregation, like the United Nations agents funds programs. The other one is the work that I mentioned on the Global Digital Compact, which is now bringing the countries together to make sure that from all we have a global compact that addresses the need of governance. So all these are instruments that are to allow national initiatives at national level, policies and whatnot, to actually derive from those global instruments to actually create a specific national instrument. Same way that next week we're going to issue the guidance for the United Nations. So then that is to allow each agency to extract from there to say, okay, we'll just copy and issue that at the entity level, or to extract from there and then create and issue one. But because you have to remember that either countries or agencies or individuals, we have different risk appetites. So for those countries that have higher risk appetite, they will perhaps want to embrace, to have less guardrails, but the guidance will be there, the global compact will be there to make sure that everybody understands. Because the one thing I didn't mention is the whole knowledge gap of the practice itself of generative AI and usage. So the knowledge is not with the government, is not with the United Nations, it's with the private sector. They are the ones who know best this technology, right? The generative AI usage. So as we create the policies guidance, we also have to invest in this knowledge gap to make sure that we are better equipped to support those latecomers, while perhaps the early adopters will have learned already. So I hope that answered the question.
There are some comments on the chat. I wonder if SB, you want to jump in and share your thoughts. You're on mute. You're still on mute.
Yeah, I saw the first comment about, I think it's from Johannes, which is very good, which international agents, there's discussion about whether to create an agency to regulate AI. I mean, that question I was, yesterday, on Tuesday, I attended the principals meeting, bringing a number of United Nations agencies that are really leading, from ITU to United Nations University to the human rights, the Secretariat, the Tech Envoy. So those are all these discussions about whether an entity is needed to regulate this very important area that will impact greatly the future for all of us. So that discussion is still ongoing. I wouldn't say let's create, but I just want to also be mindful, because for that discussion about creation or not creation of an agency that is responsible for this area, I think we have to also be mindful of our traditional reaction to a problem, which is create a task force or working group or something of that sort, right? So in the focus of what problem we're trying to resolve and what instruments we have, if the gap is so big that whether it requires an agency, because in that discussion on Tuesday, the International Atomic Energy Agency was there. So that there's an agency for atomic energy because of the risks it posed, right? So whether that something similar to that is needed for generative AI, it is still under discussion. And I think the next year Conference of the Futures might actually get us to a point where perhaps this will be something that will be decided that, okay, we'll create. Or if no, we don't create, we'll say, look, we'll have a mechanism, but certainly a mechanism to have that to help regulate this area is very important and needed.
Same as Michael. Paul was raising his hand. Welcome, Michael.
Hi, Carlos.
Hi, Mike.
Hi, Carlos. Oh, Bernardo, I don't envy you your job. The issues you raise are so complicated and difficult, as well as you say, having some opportunity. We did have a very good workshop earlier with Johannes Schunter about possible uses in our work, looking quite limited in a limited way. And so I'm not coming, and Johannes came up with some very good use examples. So I'm not coming at this from an anti-technology perspective. In fact, I was a sort of pioneer. I set up one of the first community email groups in the UK, and has been involved in early stuff with the World Wide Web. And in 2002, I was a coordinator for UNRISD, preparing for the World Conference on the Information Society, which I suspect you might be too young to have actively involved in, and most of the other people on this list too. But this was as the the first or second wave of information technology came into the world, and there was an absolute resolution by all the powers that be that we could not have a digital divide. And here, 20 years later, we most clearly have a digital divide of the most extreme form. So much so that, as you've just pointed out, it is a handful of private sector companies who are really currently dominating and know about this generative AI technology, as opposed from other AIs. And so you have the problem of regulation, you have the problem of multiple different interests, whether people are doing this to make money or to help development or to pursue other agendas. We obviously have very important political differences in how this technology can be used in terms of surveillance and state control, which you I quite respect, but the UN has to tread very carefully in allowing its member states to make their own decisions. And so it is a very complicated thing. What I would say to the km4dev community is that we do not have, whilst we could and should look for ways to use this technology to help our work, we can and should also promote alternative narratives of priorities in this world and about knowledge in this world, which are that the knowledge that is lacking from the development is the knowledge from the global poor. And if you look at the data sets which are used by generative AI to create their content, they are nearly all based in the global north. All the research is done and funded in the global north, even when it's publicly funded and not being done for private gain. So I think it is completely right to have this conversation, completely right that Bernardo is trying to make some sense of this at the UN level to get good as best guidelines as possible. But to us as practitioners, I would also caution, prioritize the need to maintain an independent narrative and a critical narrative, and to, in our own organizations, when we're talking about where to invest money in communications and knowledge management, is to remember the decolonization debates we've had in the last year, to remember the long-running talks about participatory development, grassroots development, last shall be first, and so on, and to invest in other systems to bring that into the public debate, because relying on a few Californian multinationals or the Chinese state to do that is probably not a good idea.
Good point, Michael. I think especially on this digital divide, which is certainly there's a huge risk to exacerbate that, let alone the biases of the content, as you rightly mentioned, that looks at the one side of the world and then how these can, all the negative I would say the results and the negative outcomes that it can give to in terms of the whole evolution of the world. I just want to add the other part that many don't speak about is the loss of cognitive functions of humans as we rely heavily on technology. I think there was already a research on the taxi drivers before using GPS and after using GPS, how the loss of some cognitive functions, where researchers have identified those loss of those cognitive functions, and this was GPS is a small scale, generative AI is a much larger scale, and within that loss becomes the biases because of the dependence to the generative AI response, which then will only address perhaps content that comes from the north, and then the global south will be completely ignored or not part of the overall response, and then practices and policies will be designed around the content provided by the generative AI, which really looks at one side of the world. So being from Mozambique, I'm from the global south, so it's for me it's a key area that I always ask and then bring up to the attention to every time I have the opportunity to engage with countries from the global south, to say yes, there's an opportunity, but there's a challenge, and some, the countries from the global south needs to really make a double effort to ensure that they're not left behind, and their voice has to be very much heard in all these platforms that will fulfill engagement. So the Global Compact will be an interesting one. The Summit of the Future will be an interesting one. But most important, as you rightly say, we individuals as practitioners, we need to understand the biases, the risks, or the half-truth that some of these tools bring, and then how can you complement that with the other part that you bring, meaning that you make sure that that is not just a decision from one side that will be applicable to everyone, because there's a gap of knowledge from the South included in these data models.
Thank you, Bernardo, for bringing the aspect on the global South. And there's a comment of the question from Cipino. Maybe we can allow him to, share more about this. This concern is more about, the indigenous knowledge. Over to you, Cipino.
I think it's for you, Big, if you want to jump in.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Well, the issue I wanted to raise is again this not even digital divide, but how the benefits of AI can reach people, even illiterate people, how we can also bring the knowledge from, knowledge sharing is not from wise people to stupid people. We share knowledge and everybody can contribute. As we did, we started in the mid-90s to build so-called expert systems. For example, mainly for agriculture, but the system which allowed to identify weeds and the methods to deal with weeds in the field and so on. So my question is how to combine, because the AI system have to learn from somewhere, how they can learn from people who have knowledge but don't write the scientific papers or make the beautiful presentation. For example, we learned a lot from when I worked with the World Bank on the soil erosion. And that's the one thing. There is a lot of data, but influencing, finding out what that means, how it can help to solve a real problem. For example, how can I make, for a farmer, how can I make more money from my plot? You see, the knowledge at this point is very localized. And when we think about the AI system, we think in terms not only huge data, but also we think what it makes sense of all this data in relation to something very real, very concrete. Sorry, I don't want to make a lecture about this, but one of the first articles of AI in development was written in 1996 in the journal IEEE Expert. At that time, AI was not a nice term. We use the term like expert system, diagnostic systems, and so on, but that was really where the tools started to be developed. Okay, thank you for giving me a slot to talk.
Thank you, Signe. I hope I pronounced your name correctly. So I think you raised a very interesting, a very good point. I mean, research has shown that if you don't know about a topic and you use AI, normally you gain about 35% knowledge, or I mean, you increase your ability to know about the topic by 35% on average. And if you know about the topic and you use AI, the increase is very minimal because you already know about the topic. But the question in the example you gave for farmers, I think is very interesting because we are assuming that the knowledge is the one that is available in a container. We are forgetting that the knowledge exists locally, and that local context it cannot be applied. I mean, I'm from Mozambique. I've seen some. For instance, the cashew industry suffered greatly because of some policies that came from the global north that were tried to be applied in Mozambique, and actually it didn't work at all. Actually, it killed the industry pretty much. So it had to be revived from scratch. So I think that's where I think as a practitioner, what Michael said, we need to make sure that the usage is not, I mean, we don't use it as blindly, saying because it is there, this is the truth, what will work, but we need to have two efforts. Perhaps that's why some discussions about creating an agency or create governance is to really make sure that we strike the right balance between what worked somewhere else and is designed as practice, and what is local context and knowledge that is not available in this system, to make sure that the combination of both provide that output that we want, which is developing that economy, developing that industry, support food security. So basically to really support achievement of sustainable development goals, right? So I think that's where we as a practitioners need to strike that balance. Governments and UN, we need to strike that balance to make sure that this is not trying to take a model that is contain data from researchers from the global north, and then it's absent, this absence of data from global south, and then you are trying to apply that in the global south. So I think when I was at WHO, I used to say the same on digital health, where it's special to make sure that if the test results if something is tested in the global north, doesn't mean it worked in the global south. So one is to pay attention. Think about the COVID-19, right? I think there was a whole discussion that, okay, because it impacted greatly the global north, the global south will suffer 10 times more because of poverty and whatnot, which didn't actually happen that way, right?
You see, that is something that AI allows us to be problem-oriented, not only data-oriented. not giving tons of data without any consideration how it is digested, I say digest, and applied to solve real problems. And that's what I get from what you are saying.
Yes, thank you.
So if there are no more comments, we can pass to the second part of this session. Thank you so much, Bernardo, for your words. And please feel free to join the Fishbowl if you feel. But I think we can generate a more brainstorming. Some of the people in the group may feel a little bit shy with such a big group. So what we thought is we're going to use the format of a fishbowl for the next part. How the fishbowl works, I'm going to share on a slide to make it very simple. So basically, we all are going to turn off our cameras, and then we're going to switch. I mean, those who are going to speak will turn on their cameras. So we will start with Johannes, with Ian, and I'm not sure if Sarah is around, but if Sarah is around also with her, we have a conversation to follow what we have been talking now. And then whoever wants to join the fishbowl will have to turn on the camera and then introduce themselves. And you can either share your thoughts on the conversation we're having or just share your experience. There are a lot of experiences here in this room right now, so it will be really good that we can brainstorm all together. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing. I'm going to turn off my camera. And I'm going to ask Ian and Johannes to maintain their cameras on. The rest, please switch off your cameras. So we will just keep the two of you. Okay, I'm not sure, Sarah, if you're here, join with your camera on. Couldn't find you on the chat, on the list of participants, so I wasn't sure, but if you are, please join in. And any first comment, Johannes or Ian, you want to jump in? Or otherwise, I mean, we heard we might not be losing our jobs, but how do you see, Johannes or Ian, how do you see, based on your own experience already and what you have been hearing and reading, how our role is going to be? I mean, are we losing? How is our role? It's already here. So as practitioners, I know you have, Johannes, you have written a number of articles on this topic as well on LinkedIn. So do you want to start jumping in?
Well, yeah, yes, thanks so much. I mean, it was a wonderful intro from Bernardo, and I can just like underline everything. I really like the notion that he put out, that we are the ones who have to bring this revolution to our organizations, because that's really what it is. I fully agree with everything he said. Also, the level at which he put it, like it's a revolution on par with the internet, with electricity, and even steam engine beyond. And it's probably our role to bring this to our colleagues and make the most of it and thrive in that environment. One thing that I find very interesting is that as KM practitioners, one area where we've been very successful in was the implicit knowledge, like bringing people together, communities of practice, knowledge networks, corporate social networking. We've been very effective in facilitating that, and there was a lot of value brought to organizations through PM, through that channel. Where we've not been very good at, I believe, is the explicit knowledge, which is the knowledge content that Bernardo was talking about. And that's where the revolution is happening. That's what AI brings. You can now have a system in the house that is trained on all the material in the organization, can ask it questions and will answer back. And not only that, it can apply that knowledge of the organization that has been written down to a particular problem that you have. Like he brought an example. So that is an absolute game changer. And I'm not sure that reality has set in what kind of transformative change that is. And if our goal is anything, then I think it would be to fully understand this role and bring it to our organizations. And that implies that we need to be the pioneers. We need to fully be practitioners. We need to become AI practitioners and understand the risks and the possibilities and the limitations, so we can talk about it. So the pioneers of that revolution, if we are not, it's either we're that, or we can stay doing that community work, which is still equally important. I don't want to downplay that at all. In fact, I believe it will be even more important in the future, because that's where the knowledge comes from. It's the people, and we still need to bring them together. But the entire knowledge content world, the entire explicit world, I believe KM will be AI. And if we are not becoming AI practitioners, we will have a very hard time being KM practitioners.
Thank you. Yeah.
So, hi. So, thanks, Johannes. That was very thought-provoking, and also kind of almost sends me on a rant about the role of KM. I think. So the thing for me is, yes, as you mentioned, one of the things that we often do well as KM when we talk about is tacit knowledge, implicit knowledge. And in fact, the reality of it is that, you know, at least in my organization, I think on the explicit knowledge, on the tacit knowledge, we struggle equally to do them well. And in different organizations, KM focuses on one or the other. It's the combination of the two that is the killer. So for me, KM will always have a role, because it's a long time before AI is going to actually be able to really digest. So the kind of meeting we're having today, this can't be replaced by an AI, the kind of dialogue we're having today, and the unpredictability of what will come out of it. And I think we need to remember that a lot of the work we do isn't actually at threat. Where the opportunity is in combining this ability to analyze what's already written and documented, as well as the things that are not and may not be in any time in the future. So while AI is more able to capture, may become more able to capture more tacit knowledge that's made explicit, there will still be a large amount of tacit knowledge, which is essential to doing our work in development and in context. And I think it's the combination of the two that is really important. And just an example on that is, when you gave your talk last month, you know, one of the things that struck me is you said that generative AI is like having a kind of a fast intern, in that, you know, the intern can go out, research and pull together the information, but you still need to read that and copy edit that and see the context. And I think the role of KM people, but the role of kind of people working in development in general is, on one hand, we can use AI to kind of crunch large amounts of information, some of which we don't even know where it's sourced from, and give us some kind of analysis. But at the same time, we have to use our contextual and individual knowledge to actually make that work, and to say, is that accurate? Is it not? Is it a hallucination? Is that biased? Is that relevant to this context? And I think the more you play with these tools, the more you realize, on one hand, it's amazing what they can do. On the other hand, you can quite often stump them with some quite simple questions, because they don't have the knowledge or the context to understand it. And I think that contextual knowledge is really, really important. And it's where we bring value, which is to say, how can we use these tools on one hand, as Bernardo said, how can we use them ethically, and how can we make, but also how can we use them contextually to help us do our work? So for me, I think there's a lot of possibilities. I think a lot of our organizations haven't fully understood that, because I think we always forget about the value of tacit knowledge in our excitement to capture more and more explicit knowledge. And I think the issue of indigenous knowledge is quite interesting, because on one hand, it may be possible that we can capture that more, and we can feed more of that knowledge to AI to make sure that it's less biased. But at the same time, some of that knowledge may never be fully captured, or at least not in the short term. And so we have to deal with that bias now in that shorter term, to make sure that when we're using this knowledge, which is often coming from a small number of kind of Western oriented sources, that we're not making development decisions based on that without looking at the flip side of what's coming from indigenous and local contextual knowledge as well. So anyway, that was just a kind of an interesting thought for me on on where we're going with this. It's certainly here to stay, and we will use it. We can't say, you know, a lot of organizations now are legislating and they're trying to say, well, you know, we don't want our staff to use AI for this, we don't want their staff to use AI for that, and there's this kind of risk that, you know, I think it was, I don't know if this is still true, but at some point the Italian government had said we're not going to use AI. And, you know, I think at this point, when new technologies like this come, they're here and we have to learn how to use them effectively and understand both the positives and the negatives. So I think it will change our life. I don't think it will mean that our jobs will disappear. In fact, I think it just means our jobs will change. And it's actually quite an exciting time to kind of learn how to combine this with our more traditional KM skills. Anyway, that's my KM rant. And thanks for this opportunity.
Thank you, Ian. I was wondering, because you were talking also in a way about the ethics. So I know there are already examples in the room on how how AI has been utilized. And I was wondering, Chris, you have some example that you want to share related to the World Association of Medical Editors? Chris?
Sorry, I've just come onto the network, and yes, I'm afraid I've missed everything that's been said except Ian's excellent rant there, which I subscribe to entirely. Yes, in my other hat, like as Vice President of the World Association of Medical Editors, we produced a recommendation for scholarly publishers on generative AI, large language models, and chatbots, which you'll find on the internet. In fact, I'm just trying to get the link here, but I'll post it to the discussion. Essentially, we started from the perspective of well, we're writing as academic publishers, I have to say so. Our point of view was that chatbots shouldn't be considered authors. That was the very first sort of realization, because people started publishing papers in which ChatGPT was named as an author, which is ridiculous for many reasons, but it's ridiculous for legal reasons above all, because a chatbot has no legal persona, and as such couldn't perform the various roles required of an author as laid down by the various publishing ethics bodies like COPE and ICGME. Well, I won't sort of précis the recommendation, which, as I say, you'll find on the internet. There are 5 components to it. I think the idea is not so much that we're anti-chatbots. That would be ridiculous. Chatbots are, I believe, something that can be of value when used in the appropriate way. The bias concerns, the concerns for what we don't like to call hallucinations. In fact, we don't use that term in our recommendation because we feel it personifies chatbots. All of these are elements that, you know, there are negative elements, obviously, that we're concerned about. We're concerned about false referencing, invented references and the like. And we want to ensure that authors work with publishers on solving these problems, because it's not good enough for an author to simply say, oh, I used a chatbot to help me produce this text, and now here it is, go and clean it up for me, Mr. Editor. And equally, it's difficult it's difficult really to pick out what the chatbot has done and what the individual has done, and that's something that we're anxious that the responsibility is not just passed on anonymously. There has to be some responsibility here. I think that's a sort of key key component of the recommendations. But someone has to take responsibility. Someone has to also provide the software required to detect the use of a chatbot. There's been some early attempts at providing this kind of detection software, which is fallible. It's not very good at the moment. I mean, I stand to be corrected, but I think right now we're looking for software that will identify what we've been calling botfo. We feel that there's a completely new language coming out. It's a new form of information, and I think it's important to make that distinction. I mean, I throw this open to you. You know, do you agree? In my view, there's the kind of information that's prepared by human brains and the kind of information that currently we're seeing prepared by chatbots and generative AI in general. There are distinct differences and there are characteristics of both which separate them. So I think we need a new word, and I've suggested the word botfo, chatbot information, made short, as a way of distinguishing that kind of information from other. We talk about misinformation, we talk about disinformation. We're quite clear on definitions for both of those. Even malinformation has a definition. But the disinformation that you get from a human is different from the disinformation you get from generative AI, is our suggestion. I think I'll leave it there, really. If you want to examine our recommendations, which are, I'm bound to say, transitional, they'll have to be modified as we go along. We're already in version 2 right now, and the version 2 is about well, 50% different from version 1. Anyway, I invite you all to have a look at that and comment.
So the Fishbowl is gonna grow, but I'll let you, Ian, and then Johannes, and then we let the Fishbowl extend it.
Thanks. I just wanted to say something quickly on the kind of ethics issue. So, I mean, one of the things we think about in development work is things like do no harm. So if you're using AI, it's not only, well, is this information incorrect or something like this, how is this information, what's the potential to use this information to cause harm? I think it's a complex issue because we have to think about our own behavior as development actors and being ethical, but we also have to think about there are other people out there who are doing things. And even with regulation, we'll seek to do unethical things and we'll seek to use AI for unethical purposes. And I think we shouldn't have any illusions about that in certain places we may be advocating for certain kind of policies, or we may be trying to work to kind of build bridges within communities, and there are people who are actively using AI to kind of stoke division and conflict. And so, you know, we need to both regulate our own behavior, and then we need to think, how do we counteract this? But I think it's not just a question of whether something is false or whether something is something is inaccurate or something like this. It's a question of we really need to think about the end use of this. One key aspect of that for me is that there is still a need for human oversight of AI produced products and an identification that these are AI produced products, because I think it's foolish to just take something. It's fine, you know, between friends and but you know, if I was to make an official publication from UNICEF and it was generated by AI and I didn't check it, I think that would be you know, a misconduct on my part, because you know, ultimately, if you put something out in your name, you're accountable for it, and you have to be able to stand behind what it says, including those implications I talked about, not just the accuracy of it, but how it might be used. So I think we need to think about that kind of human oversight of what's produced. So it can produce fantastic things, but if we don't have oversight and take accountability, and we don't indicate how it's been used. The other aspect on, of course, the unethical use is there are people who will use AI and not indicate it's been used and use it for nefarious nefarious purposes. There are technologies under development for detecting that, but as of now, they're not at all foolproof. But it's quite an interesting area to see, can you or can you not actually detect when something's been developed by generative AI? And I think that's, you know, something also to keep an eye on to be useful. I don't think there's anything wrong with using AI to develop content, but we need to be, as I said, it's this issue of having some human oversight on its ultimate use. Thanks.
Thank you, Ian. Johannes?
Yes, I think this touches on both what you both said. I believe it's not helpful to look at the AI as just this machine. I think the more useful framework in practice is to look at it as a virtual collaboration partner, as a virtual employee that reports to me. Exactly what Ian says about oversight. The AI can take over a lot of tasks, particularly the media knowledge tasks. I don't have to summarize anymore. I don't have to pick out, read 30 pages to get one information. Now the AI can do it much better. What the AI does not have now is intent. It doesn't have vision, and it doesn't have motivation. So that's what I bring them to the table. And I become the person who is setting the goals and is directing the AI in the direction of the goal that I want to achieve. And that's what managers do. So when we go back to what does our role look like in the future, I firmly believe that we're all, with AI, transitioning into a managerial role where we have these entities here that we will direct. We're the ones creating goals, creating work packages, delegating them to different entities. Then we have to review the work we get back, we evaluate it, we have to do judgment calls, we have to make decisions of what we want to do with that. AI shouldn't do that. As Ian says, there needs to be the oversight. We are the managers. And that is scary in itself because we're not all like signed up to be managers. But with AI in this world as additional entities, we will have to. Because if we refuse this role, others who do step into that management role and have several entities working for them, they will outpace us and they will produce much more impact. And then we can retreat into some kind of artisanal craft where we hone a particular set of skills where people might pay extra just to know that a human did this for the stats, like the way you buy a hand weave bag because you enjoy a human having made this rather than a factory made bag. But I'm not sure that's the majority of jobs that will survive. So I think the future of our success in a post-ChatGPT world depends on whether we are willing to embrace this role as managers and whether we actually learn to deal with these entities not as one or the other, but as entities I collaborate with, because I find it relatively unrealistic to say, oh, we will detect this content is made by AI and this content is human. In reality, in the future, all content will be a collaboration product, or most, not all, but most content, particular content in our environment where we do bureaucratic things, will be a collaboration product between us and the AI. And it will be almost probably impossible to dissect which part of it now was AI influenced or AI created, and which part was my thought and my direction or my actual wording. It doesn't matter at the end. When I'm the manager who is responsible for the output and for the decisions that are being made, the ethical concern that I have is not at all in using those virtual entities as collaboration partners. The concern I have is how the decisions are made, what to do with whatever the AI produces. And automating decisions, that's where we get to the real sticky ethical points, up to the end of automated warfare, which are really horrific scenarios. But as for us, as far as knowledge management, knowledge work is concerned, I think the best thing we can do is to step into that managerial role and learn to engage with those entities on that level.
Thank you, Johannes. And you know, I think I'm going to bring one of the cameras on because it's actually, this person is actually bringing a very good experience within UNICEF on how to take a managerial role. Isn't it, Malika?
Yeah, thank you. Hi, I'm Malika. I'm a data scientist at UNICEF Office of Evaluation. I'll just share what we've been doing with AI and natural language processing models specifically. Hopefully that can spark some interesting ideas on how you can use it for knowledge management work. So when we talk about AI or NLP, there are two distinct type of spaces that we are talking about. One is generative AI that we spoke about, which is the publicly available ChatGPT or Bard and these generative AI models. And the second space is using data science to build your own machine learning or models. The problem with the first type of generative AI models, which many of you have alluded to already, is the lack of transparency. We don't exactly know what are the different training sets or what are the building blocks of these models and apps. And we also don't know what happens to the data that we input into these apps, which is dangerous, especially when we talk about using these apps to analyze data from qualitative interviews or other sensitive information. So given these sort of black box nature of these generative AI apps, we at the evaluation office have been engaging a lot more in the data science work, where we try to build our own machine learning and NLP models using open source frameworks. And this work requires human intelligence and human oversight, not just intelligence or skills in terms of data science and coding, but also thematic and programmatic knowledge of the topics. So at the evaluation office, we've been using NLP models to carry out scoping and synthesis work. This is perhaps something that KM teams also have to engage in frequently. UNICEF has large volume of evaluation reports that we've produced over the years, and one of the things that we do quite frequently is take stock of the evidence that has been generated by these reports to understand what is the breadth of knowledge already generated in these reports. So we built NLP models to identify evaluation reports on specific topics and then generate summaries from these topics. And our goal with using these or building these models have been to improve efficiencies, improve productivity. For example, for our case, instead of having to spend a month reviewing over 2,000 reports, we created this model which can scope relevant reports in a much quicker time. And the process of creating these models entailed inputs from data scientists as well as from thematic and programmatic experts, as I noted. And just to reiterate what Bernardo mentioned in the first talk, that our vision or our goal has also been that AI and machine learning models should be there to assist us and not to replace the human intelligence and oversight that is much needed, especially in the development space. Over.
Thank you, Malika. I'm gonna join another fish that has been, I think the gender balance is really unbalanced today, but welcome, Elise, and tell us what is your experience in this area and how are you bringing also the human-to-human aspect?
Well, thank you for having me online. And it is honored to be in the face of a lot of these professionals that I hear, and the level of knowledge and in terms of academic and is quite a high respect of what you guys are working on. And I'm very glad and honored that you guys are talking about these topics. In regards to the clients that I deal with on a day-to-day basis, they're a little bit more fundamental, a little bit more simpler. They're still at the traditional means, still kind of grudging along with file cabinets and shared drives and websites that they kind of brought forward old governance plans that hasn't truly adopted a good understanding of what data is just yet, or records or information or knowledge or wisdom just yet. But I'm there to curate that and help guide them, but still be mindful of what's to come, the big wave of innovation, and use quite a sense of analogies for them to help them understand and or be prepared for, whether it's a atmospheric change or a cultural change, whether it's a generational characteristic change, focusing on talent management and integration and change management, more focus on the people level of understanding and their challenges that they face, In the world that I work in, we break things up into 3 categories, which is cognitive, information domain, and the physical domain. And the symbiotic relationship between each one of those layers, there's obviously a knowledge management transfer issue or a challenge or a gap, however we want to define it. The analogy that I like to use for some of my newer clients is making a decision that they're going to get pizza on Friday. They use a cognitive decision that they're going to get pizza on Friday. They didn't need AI. They didn't need technology. They only had leveraged their gut decisions, literally their gut, to make a good, passionate decision that they're going to make and eat pizza on Friday. But if they had leveraged something like technology, what would they use? And is that technology universal or common? The answer is yes. I mean, most of us have iPhones or smartphones, and we have an iOS system that is preloaded with some applications when we first started it up. And I use an acronym called TEDx. That's Task, Events, Documents, Information, and Contacts. We all have, a contacts app, an events app, documents app, or some sort of understanding of information. And there's a bias behind that. Someone thought about, what are these applications that these users are going to use? And based off of trends and, over time, people end up using things like Yelp or Uber or something to kind of find out, what pizza do they really want on Friday? They don't have to use it, but they could use it. And they're kind of assuming based off of, their ratings, if they're really going to get pizza on Friday. And really my audience really, associates to that. And I really truly believe that, well, what are you really trying to use technology for? Aside from all the great, spectrum of what we could use it for and the automation and all that good stuff, it's great. And it's going to end up complementing, but I'm focusing on the simple user adoption because the general user is the general user of the IoT, the Internet of Things. Don't get me wrong, I work with engineers at the highest level, but honestly, their level of understanding is so trivial that the general user is just looking for the pizza on Friday. So let's go back to the pizza understanding. I have another analogy called eat pie, and I think that's a really good analogy for AI. And eat pie is just like the pizza pie. It stands for events, activities, and tasks. And then there's a dash, people, information, and engagements. People, information, engagements are exactly what we engage with. We engage with people and information and engagements on a day-to-day basis. But the first part of it, events, activities, and tasks, can be loaded onto the digital side as well. And I think understanding how that's categorized there's a big bias to it, honestly. And I think AI could help us understand it. Not that that is a required, certificate or anything like that, but I do like the information, the ITIL certification. I've leveraged that quite some time, and those that watch, I'm a eccentric person. I like Ready Player One, the novel and the movie, and the curator really resonates to me as a knowledge manager. If those that remember that movie or the book, and I really think the knowledge managers today are going to be the new librarians, teaching the new generation of librarians, and that new generation is going to be AI. Right now, if you think about a library, we have standalone physical libraries that we go to, but who dictates outside, the government officials and the demographic to kind of dictate what information is going to be in the library? But nonetheless, a library is part of a conference of people, and the librarians kind of help differentiate not just nonfiction and fiction categories, but also kind of based off of what is the community really liking to read, and what do they really want to know, and how do they want to know it? So it's easy for them to find that information. But as you could see, that information is kind of tailored to that demographic, and every person's a little bit different. I really think by capturing that information, that events, events, activities, and tasks of how people are interact with the library is going to help tailor the introduction of how you engage information and find information, kind of shape that so that when you're looking for the right pizza, it already knows what application information you're searching for or seeking for. It's really innovative. It's really exciting. It provides us a better understanding of taxonomy versus ontology, understanding that maybe it will start understanding my needs Maybe the applications on my cell phone will basically be tailored to what I need versus what is preloaded, because it takes me quite some time to kind of discover and find new information and apps that I need. I think it'll be really nice to see for the first time when I open my phone, there's new applications that are really relevant to me. And I could find and seek information before I even press the phone to turn on. But that's just my opinion. And like I said, I'm only focusing at the ground level here. And it's really an honor to listen to everyone talk about, innovative things and high topics, because once I pulled the generation of clients that I'm pushing forward, they're going to expect that the topics that you guys are speaking to be aligned and cultivated already. And my clients are going to be the ones that are going to be more comfortable with that understanding. So keep on going, guys.
Thank you, Ellis. So I'm gonna give floor. Oh, good. We have 2 more fishes. So Professor Senaji, would you like to introduce yourself and then open up? You are mute. We don't hear you.
I think it's something, an issue with the mic, but it seems like Professor's not on mute. Yeah. While we waiting for Professor Thomas to adjust that, we cannot hear you.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you very much. It's great to be here. And I've listened very intently to the various presentations and great insights. I think that our role as knowledge managers will evolve, as we have heard, to be more of an interface between the AI or the AI systems and the users of information in the framework of curating it. But again, we need now to upskill so that we are able to handle the evolving landscape of knowledge. And as we've heard from Johannes, if we do not embrace and update our skills, then we might be replaced. But we have an opportunity to now position ourselves as really the interface between these systems and what the users really need, because the AI systems without human insights and context will amount to very little. And so as managers, we then need to step in, take up our roles in the new dispensation of the AI. And I appreciate the comments and contributions by great speakers. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Senaji. Okay, so one last fish. Hello, Rob. You want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi, I'm Rod Abson. I work with CETA. I just wanted to say thank you very much for everyone for your contributions. It's been really thought-provoking. I think it's really important that we actually have these kind of forums where we can have people that are involved in UN agencies, in private sector and academia, because I think that it's something that we really need to be able to make sure that we have these different contexts and use cases, and to continue to take what we're working on and really apply it in the specifics of how people go about things in their day-to-day life. I really like some of the analogies that have been presented today, and I suppose I just have a request of when the publication does come out that Bernardo referenced earlier about the guidelines for AI applications. He said it was going to be published next week. I think if that could be communicated more broadly to the network within km4dev, I think that would be useful. It's something that a lot of companies and organizations are looking for. How do we apply principles and guidance as an approach to this? So I think if there is something that the UN is working on, I think it's a good point to draw from. And then, just to reinforce the point that Professor Thomas mentioned earlier, which is around how do we actually, as knowledge management practitioners, build up this capability? Are there the types of courses, other than just continually hacking away at it ourselves in our own contexts? Are there ways in which we can help to really systematically bring up this capability of having this engagement with AI, with people, and that type of in-between role that knowledge managers do? So I think the more that we can share how to actually go about building up this skill set, I think that'd be really useful to continue on. Thank you.
Thank you. So as we're going to the end of the session, I'm going to pass on to my colleague Shahwa to the last part. I really want to thank all the fish on the fishbowl. And I certainly have to raise a flag. We need more gender balance in this area. So Shahwa, over to you.
Thank you, Rocio, and thank you, all the speakers. I believe that everybody is contemplating what they just heard. That's why we propose for the last few minutes of the session, we're going to do a chat boom to take a moment to reflect, because to learn without reflecting is like eating without digesting. I'm gonna explain how this will work. I will be posting 3 questions in the chat, and please, colleagues, you can think about your answers. You can type them, but please do not send it right away. We will have 3 to 1 send signal, and then we will share the answers to the same questions all at once. Please, first of questions, we would like you to think, what is your one takeaway today? Please take 30 seconds or so to think and to type. But please hold your answers. Okay. Are people ready? Okay, 3, 2, 1, send. What is your answer to that? More gender balance on AI and MI. To not fear AI, to see how to navigate, even then when there are risks. Okay, human elements are mentioned, where practitioners are proxies. Yes, AI will be divisible. All right, very good. I think people are also taking time to actually think about it. So thank you so much. And please keep contemplating these questions, because I think this is just an opener. But for the sake of the time, let's think about the second question. A must-have. What do you think, what in your opinion is the one requirement as a KM practitioner in the age of AI and ML? This one is definitely needs more thinking, so we're gonna give it more time. Again, please, as this is a chat boom, we would like to contemplate all the answers. Okay, but I guess people are already doing that. All right, I think people are already chipping in more on data science skills, more on coordination and judgment, and to have continuous conversation and ethics, facilitating, and the business partnership skills. Engaging and awareness. All right, very good. Thank you so much. And we will going to do the last but not least question. I think this is also mentioned. So again, please take your time, but let's try to hold and do the chat boom this time, like type your answer, but do not send. Let's think about the balance between human and technology, because the human element is mentioned many times, and in the fishbowl, we hear that do no harm. Then how to better engage and encourage this collaborative wisdom between human and AI, instead of overlooking human to human connection and only emphasizing the tangible products and technology. Let's think about it. Yeah. Okay, let's try to answer these last questions. sent. Please share your answers. Wow, I can barely keep up. Let me try. Scoping of KM product should be only being human to human, and to ensure to find a way to bridge digital divide at the level of society. Technologies and storytelling and human beings. I believe this is just one of the ways to open and keep having similar conversations to go. And we want to thank you for your participation today. And of course, we will be sure to share the resources and the information related to the topic. So how do we get to the information? Please, Gladys, tell us.
Thank you so much, Yakwa. Thank you everyone for joining today's session and also contributing. For those who would like to continue further the conversation, we have the B groups for the km4dev. You're welcome to join us. The membership is free. I'm sharing on the chat on how to join km4dev if you are a first-time member. And also we are going to share the recording via km4dev YouTube channel, and here it is on how you can join, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and then we will keep on the conversation. Furthermore, also km4dev has a km4dev channel, and this conversation, the knowledge that we are sharing here, perhaps you can create and also contribute towards the km4dev channel. We will keep you updated about the process and also more updates about the upcoming knowledge gap. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, all our speakers, our participants. We look forward to engaging in this conversation on AI and knowledge management. Over to you, Rachel. Allow me to acknowledge Chris Collins. I know he's been quite quiet here. Please, if you're here, say hi to us.
Thank you for all your participation, and we continue on this search and learning together.
Thank you for participating and sharing and learning together. Have a nice day.